All right. It's been like 3 weeks.
I know, man. It's been too long. I feel all out of sorts this morning. Got in late. Haven't talked to you in 3 weeks. Haven't even texted. No conversations with you. No nothing.
So what's new in the world?
Well, we're about to get all the prototypes back finally after
Okay.
we had to send them back.
Yep.
And then getting 2 new colors. So we have 5 total on the way. I just texted him this morning to figure out when he's actually shipping. He sent us the photos, making sure everything was tip top because I have now been like, I need
Approved.
to make sure.
Yeah.
Approved. So I'm like kind of starting to not stress, but like starting to feel the pressure a little bit of like, okay, they're going to be here and I need to start marketing and getting all the content out. I was chatting with my partner the other day of sort of what type of message or direct message we want to send to people that we want to potentially partner with or have as affiliates. What does that wording sound like? How little or how much? How formal or informal? I feel like it has to be very customized to the person that it's potentially going to. Like somebody maybe with a lot of following or somebody, you know, a little more established might be slightly more formal. And then somebody that's a little less of a following, maybe less formal, just like, hey, we love your shit. Do you want to come collaborate with us?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, so just kind of go through all. There's a little feeling of just inexperience with that on my part. So trying to, flush everything out and weed through that in my head. Of
How many people can you send? Are you going to send free product or?
No, it's more like, hey, we're about to launch this product. Here's the link. Are you interested in partnering with us?
Like being an affiliate?
Yeah, like being an affiliate, very simple. And then determining from there if there's ones. We have a couple in mind that are like, if they say yes, then I'll pony up the money to get them prototypes made and send them to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other ones are more like, is there some way you guys could help promote it, talk about it before we actually give you a prototype, just by saying, hey, they're about to do a pre-launch on this product. We love it, blah, blah, blah. Here's the link, Is there a way to sort of walk that line of not having to shell out money for 10 prototypes or 15 prototypes or whatever? Mm-hmm. And then just on my part, starting to make teaser videos, starting to do photography. I'm feeling a little insecure about like, I haven't done any product shots in like a long time. Hell, I haven't even done any photography in a long time. So, all the things of taking something to the next level that I've never done before.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of starting to feel that a little bit. Any advice?
Yeah. Do you remember what we talked about, 30-day sprints?
Yes.
That's like kind of reduces all the anxiety of saying like, I don't know what's going to work. This is what I think is going to work. Let me get this done as quickly as possible in 30 days and we'll find out.
I think it's funny you brought that up. I hadn't consciously been thinking about the 30-day sprint, but in my head I've been formulated like, okay, let's try this first, and if that doesn't work, then let's try this. I've been like chunking it out, at least, maybe not necessarily in 30 days, but
what I heard you just say is like affiliate program partnerships. Then I heard you say product shots, and then also, you didn't say it, but a layer deeper I heard was sort of like content briefs. So the best way to get really good affiliate content is by you setting the standard, right? So if you created, let's say you used your product page to test out different types of hype content, right? So let's say you tried 10 different formats of a 30-second video where you're announcing that this thing is coming, and you found 2 formats that particularly worked, right? Yeah. With a specific hook, with a specific body, with a specific opening visual, and now you package that up and you include that into the brief for the affiliates and say like, hey, I actually know that these 2 to 3 formats work best. So feel free to use that. You have creative freedom, but we know that these 3 formats work. And that kind of, it's not creative dictation, but it is really helpful as the ambassador. Yeah. You're like, yeah, I want to know what actually works.
Yeah.
So you kind of just gave yourself 3 buckets to focus on, is like the logistics of the affiliate program. What are they going to get, right? What's the offer? How are you going to reach out to them? Is it going to be personalized? Is it going to be automated? And how many of them do you want to work with? Then you doing the product shots, which are one thing. And then the other is more of like the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you want to work with? That's always a really interesting question. And I always think about it as, in the early stages, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no. So if you were to craft the perfect message that's like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, it came from my heart, this is the story, would love for you to be a part of it, and somebody's crickets, or somebody is like, yeah, but it's going to cost you $12,000, then like, you people are out.
Right.
But 7 people are going to respond and be like, oh my God, that's amazing, I actually have that problem too, I would love to partner. Boom, you guys are the ones.
Yeah, that's what I had reconciled in my brain a little bit, as far as who do I want to work with. It does have to be yeah, we're on board to like make this thing happen with you, because we actually like the product as much as you like the product. Mm-hmm. As much as you decided to create it, we think it's going to fill a need. So
what's Bobby's job going to be once the prototypes get here?
He's working with, he found a local guy out in Barcelona that's going to help with the ads for like Facebook and Instagram, just as far as style, copy, all the creative parts of putting the ads out there, and at a reasonable price, which is nice. So it's worth, to me, it's like, it's kind of like how I look at hiring the Fiverr guy for the 3D renderings to start. It's like, okay, what's my cost versus value return on that? If this guy can pump out a few ads and help us with, you know, retention from those ads or whatever, that I like literally know nothing about Facebook or Instagram ads. I know you can place them, but I don't know what's the best method, how much you want to spend on each one, what does it mean to boost to go to a particular audience. So he's going to manage that guy, but a big part of it is just going to be me. This is where I kind of like take over, since Bobby's handled more of the design.
There's really nothing. You just described what running Facebook ads is. Like, there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
media buyers are a fucking joke. Like, that's going to take like 1 to 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's all in the creative.
Yeah, it's all, I think there's a part of me that feels like everything I have learned and followed and taken in from being in this space for the last 4 years, and maybe not doing a ton of my own personal content. Sure, I haven't like created a lot of my own reels, but the fact that I've been like digesting and taking in so many other forms of content and people's content, and seeing what works and what stories work and what narrative works, I feel like it's all coming to this point, which is why I kind of started just to create some of my own content, because I'm like, I just need to flush out being in front of the camera too, which, in looking at a few of the pieces that I've put out already, I'm like, okay, I feel like pretty comfortable and confident. Like, I can start talking about the product now, which will be, I'm so excited to be able to talk about it finally, and to be able to actually like sell something that I believe in, which I haven't been able to do. Like the studio, I didn't have to like sell it a lot. It kind of sold itself in a way. I would just bring people in and be like, hey, do you want to work with us or not? Peerspace kind of sold it for me. And then it just became referrals at that point. My things in the past prior to this, I didn't really have to like sell something hard. And I get the luxury of being able to tell this story, which is so authentic and so true to me. And I think there's an emotional tug at it of like why I created it, how it got to this point, that now that I get to put my energy into this product social media, it's almost like, because it doesn't have to be about my personal brand, it's about a brand that I'm trying to sell and that I believe in, that happens to be my brand. I think that's what excites me the most, because there's this level of sort of detachment from what I'm presenting, because it's not me. It's not like, what am I putting on my personal social media? It's what am I talking about this product, this invention that came into my head? Like that to me is more exciting than just trying to build a personal brand on social media as, say, an influencer or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that's what's kind of exciting me lately. And I think the fact that I haven't done a lot of social media, there's this feeling of like I'm ready to like burst out with content, and I'm so happy that it gets to be about this product that I created.
You were talking about owning your niche. What are you thinking about there?
Well, I just signed 2 big clients. One that's flying in from Chicago to film a podcast season here in the studio. And then another one in Vegas that I'm flying out there to basically project manage their podcast. They have a videographer team out there. They're like, look, we just want you to be us. And so we don't have to handle all of the questions. We just want to show up, film our podcast with the videographer team, and then you handle everything else. And I'm like, perfect. I love that. Like, we want to make sure the quality is tip top. We want to make sure these guys edit everything properly. We want to make sure the thumbnails look good. They're like, we just want you to manage that so we don't have to. I'm like, awesome. I love that. Like, so excited for this job. So excited for this opportunity. And it was these last 2 gigs that really made me realize like, oh, I'm a fucking expert in the podcast world now. Like, yeah, sure, I don't have a podcast that has millions of followers or whatever, but that's not what's required. What's required is I know a lot of the angles and avenues and lanes and things that people don't think about when it comes to podcasting that I just naturally think about because I've been doing it for so long with so many clients in here, that you don't always have to be doing the thing that you're an expert in. You can just know a lot of shit about it. And I've come to realize I know a lot of shit about podcasting now.
Yeah, I mean, you've produced episodes for really big podcasters.
Yeah.
And so you are an expert in producing podcasts, not necessarily in being a podcaster.
Right. Right.
That doesn't
Very
matter.
different.
Those are different roles. That's like an assistant head coach is still an expert in basketball, even though he's not on the floor.
Right.
Right.
Right. And I think I was needing to separate that. I think for so long in my head, I was like, oh, I should have a really good podcast if this is my niche and this is my business and this is what I'm doing. Like, what are these people going to think if I don't have a podcast and I'm saying I'm an expert in podcasting? But that's not the case at all. And I think I finally let go of that attachment, which has made this really fun because now I don't think about it in that way. It's just, oh, we're just sitting here conversating and building whatever this ends up turning into, which is great. But I feel like now I've done enough consulting, enough producing. You know, we talk about it like imposter syndrome being just a lack of experience. I feel experienced now in this. And that didn't really click in until maybe like a couple months ago. And so that feels really good. It's just like, you know, when I think back at my career of entrepreneurship and things like that, like I didn't really put a hard effort into, say, personal training to really like immerse myself in the craft, to learn everything possible. You know, things just sort of fell into my lap for personal training, that entrepreneurship journey where I didn't work the hardest at learning everything I possibly could about the body and training and things like that, because I was just happy to be making money and not living paycheck to paycheck and working for myself. And I was like, well, fuck, I've made it. This is like good enough for me. I don't need to keep learning. And I was also in my like late 20s. Like I cared more about like partying at that time and being a bachelor and doing those types of things. And so I think in this season of entrepreneurship with podcasting in the studio and now this product and now moving more into this like consulting role and project manager role, it's like I've crammed so much learning into the last 3 years, because I think there was also this pressure because I have a family now and I'm like, I need to make more money. But I've crammed so much pressure, or crammed so much into these like 3 years or even 2 years really, that like there is a level of pride now with it that I'm like, okay, like that payoff is kind of starting to hit now, which feels good. Like you saw me, what was it when we had our little business meeting in here that you did a little coaching for me? That was like a month and a half ago, maybe 5-6 weeks ago. I mean, there was a little stress at that time of like, I need to kind of start making some more money. And I think after that talk with you, I think it allowed me to sit more in a faith place, which is coincidentally what I think we talked about on a podcast not too long after that, that now I'm seeing the returns on that faith a little bit. And not just monetarily, just that people are believing in my expertise now, which feels really good. Like it's that simple. It feels good for people to believe in the knowledge that you have. And I think now I can go one layer deeper that used to be a chip on my shoulder back in the day, a hang up of like not feeling like I had knowledge because A, I dropped out of college, B, I felt like I shortchanged myself in the training career by not educating myself more. I was like hard on myself. I felt guilty. There was regret with that. And I think those thoughts still lingered at times while I was building this studio and while I was building this product, that like, I brought it up to you the other day. Like, am I doing enough in the sense of educating myself and learning about marketing and learning about product development, this and that, and all these different components of podcasting? And now I feel like I'm quote unquote there a little bit. Obviously there's always still more, but I feel like I've jumped into that next level where now I'm not going back.
Do you feel like your effort is there?
My effort is, yeah. And it's getting rewarded. Like we need that validation sometimes. I needed the validation of like, is my effort going to bring some sort of return? And again, not just monetarily, but people that believe in me. People that say, okay, I want to hire you because this person told me you're great at this, and now you're showing me that you're great at it. And I just had a phone call with those Vegas people, and we had a Zoom call where I'm talking about, the guy literally said, he's like, you just brought up 10 things that I would have never thought about with podcasting. Yeah. He's like, that's why we need somebody like you. And I'm like, cool, let's do it. So that felt good. It just felt good. I've been feeling good about some things lately.
Yeah, that's always huge because when you're an expert in something, you think about it all the time. And so in your own subjective experience, you feel like that is always around.
Right.
So it must be normal. Is it really that special? But then when you talk to somebody else, they're like, whoa, what the fuck are you talking about? That sounds right. And I need that rightness in my life.
Yeah. And I've never thought about that.
Yeah. I've never
like,
thought about that.
I've thought about that a million times in the last 6 days. Like, yeah.
So are you going to talk more about podcasting, producing podcasts online?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've always said that I don't want to, don't get me wrong, I love editing and things like that and running the studio. But I also feel like I want to shift out of just being like a content creator, even though I feel like that's already happening because I obviously own the studio and I don't have to content create all the time. But with this newfound validation of experience and expertise, I'm like, oh, I can be more of a project manager or a producer or maybe run a management company of podcasting or a media company or something like that. You know, who knows what this is going to grow to now, having this Vegas client where I get more experience just project managing. I mean, that's always been my thing. Like, that's what I love. Like, what better position for me to say, you guys produce it for me. I'm going to tell you if it looks good enough for this client or not. Like, how awesome is that? You just bring me the product, bring me it, and I'm going to tell you if aesthetically it matches the energy of this client. Like, I can't think of a more perfect position for me, that I don't have to get in the weeds of editing, but I am good at connecting with people and reading people's energy to know that video looks like these people and feels like these people. The delivery of these reels that you have created looks and feels like these people. And the audio is up to a quality that I think is to the standards of what these people deserve. I'm like, that sounds like my ideal position. So maybe that's what it grows to now.
How did they come to you?
My Nashville client that I helped build out a studio, which, by the way, shout out Jessica. She has sent me so much business. She's awesome.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm going back out to North Carolina for a client she sent me this weekend. The Chicago client that's coming in here to film her season of podcasting came from Jessica as well.
That's a interesting insight. Who's the next Jessica?
I think it could be these Vegas clients. You know?
They're super connected.
Super connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're kind of, I use this term a little lightly, but what I gathered from them is they're kind of like real estate moguls. Super sweet couple. Their podcast it's called the 10-year marriage. So their thing is your marriage gets like a big reinvention every 10 years, which I also believe in, because Casey and I have talked about it, because I think it was Esther Perel who said, you'll marry somebody 3 times in your lifetime, because that's what shifts in the relationship.
That's
like you
interesting.
change. So I'm like, oh, I can get on board with your guys' theme of this podcast. And they were like, we already have 30 episodes, topics. We can do more. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
So it could be a forever thing. And they're going into it with the right mindset. They're like, look, we don't care about this making money right now. If anything, it'll just be a nice legacy to leave for our kids. Like they get to hear all these stories, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, perfect.
Fun.
Yeah, this will be fun.
That's an interesting topic.
It's perfect for me too, because I'm like, when I get to go into producing a podcast, or in this case, project managing a podcast, the fact that it like lands in the field of my wife, in which I talk about this shit all the time with her, it's so nice to be already familiar with what their topics are going to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
How big is their team, their podcast team?
I don't know yet. I'll meet the team when I go out there. They're going to show me. They sort of have an office space that they may or may not use. They might go to a studio there. These are all the things we're going to flush out when I go visit on, I believe, the 18th. I'm going to go spend the day with them. I'm like, look, I just have to spend a day with you. I need to figure you guys out, figure your team out, see the space, and then I'll tell you what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's so great. I love it. Consulting, it's the best. The best. I love it.
Oh man, that's funny.
Oh, and then speaking of, this is also what I want to mention. I know I'm on this like hype session of myself right now, guys, but it feels really good. It feels really good. I'm not going to lie. I got 2 kids I got to feed, you know?
Yeah.
That's good. It was last year that I said, oh, I think I want to do some consulting. When we talk about manifestation, the first thing is that idea. And I didn't let myself block anything in those first moments. Like I said I wanted to do consulting. I didn't sit there and go, well, I don't have the experience. I don't have this. I don't have that. Like, sure, maybe I felt it a little bit at times once it got going, but I just sort of put that out into the ether that I want to do this consulting thing. And now, what is it, 1.5 years later, and I'm tackling kind of one of the biggest projects I've ever done since getting into this industry, getting into this niche. And it's simply because I just said I want to do this. And then a few little projects came my way and they kept growing and bigger clients kept coming and I kept charging a bigger rate that I thought I was worth. And lo and behold, now I just charge the biggest rate I've ever charged for anything I've ever done in my life, which is kind of cool. So, yeah. Simply because I said I want to do consulting 1.5 years ago.
It's very interesting how you can charge more by just charging more.
I know. I know. It's actually interesting because Jessica had just posted the other day. It said something like what a $5,000 client says and what a $50,000 client says. And I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it said the $5,000 client was like, oh, I just don't know if what you're offering is going to really take me where I need to go. I need to see, your results that you have provided for people, blah, blah, blah. And then the $50,000 client is like, let's do it. I'm in. It's like,
yeah,
it's so true. It's so true.
So what I've been thinking about a lot lately is like shattering my frames. And so, as it relates to pricing, it's always fun to watch people level up. And, you can see it happen in a conversation so for example, somebody may have just heard that and thought $5,000 client versus $50,000 client. You can have a $50,000 client. What? Like that's, you've never even considered that for doing the same exact thing, you can charge $50,000. Somebody may have that moment being like $500 client versus $5,000 client, right? It just keeps leveling up in that way.
I mean, I had that moment
for sure.
My first consulting gig was $500.
Totally. Yeah. And you can almost always keep leveling up your frame, and you have to kind of earn your way to do that, right?
You kind of have to earn your way into that network as well.
Earn your way into that network.
Specific demographic of people who are going to spend $50,000 on my services that I would provide for the same person for potentially $5,000.
And it's a very small group of
very small group of people.
Which is why producing high quality, reliable work is extremely important, because once you do it, that is the language of capital. Mm-hmm. Is delivering.
Reliability and delivering.
If somebody pays you a lot of money, for example, the DJ that we hired for our wedding cost way more than all the other DJs. But like, this guy could fucking live sing. He was singing opera one
Guys,
second.
I was at the wedding. He was legit.
He's crazy.
He was great. The range that this man had was incredible.
Dude, he was like singing fucking Italian opera one second and then rapping Fat Joe the next.
Yeah. And yeah, it was crazy. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
And so and his prices were really high, but let me tell you what, nobody batted an eye at it. And I can't even tell you the number of referrals that came from our wedding. Now, my mother-in-law just had a birthday. Who did we call? We called this guy, and it was a surprise birthday for her. And she was not, the person she was most excited to see was the DJ.
Man, that guy, he delivered.
He delivered.
He's worth the money. He delivered.
And then there was a handful of other rich people at that party. And they all went up to him afterwards and they were like, "You were amazing. Give me your card." And so we're just, that word of mouth and the high net worth networks spreads when you're really fucking good.
And you're delivering what you say you're good at, but then you're also delivering that experience.
Totally.
And I think that's what I realized with Jessica. And I think that's what changed me and I've heard this from other people. It's like what you told me about the cookies. What is it? Crumble, or who's the really expensive cookies?
It's not Crumble.
Not Crumble. I know.
Damn it.
Why can't I think of them now? Anyway.
They're in LA, whatever. They charge $200. Yeah.
It's the experience. And I realized that with Jessica because she was the first one to really, really appreciate it. She was like, "Oh my God, Logan came out here and spent the day with me. I got to know him. He helped refine everything in my space. He helped create this amazing spot that I love stepping into every morning." So the appreciation and gratitude she had for the experience that I provided for her for that day, that's what clicked in me and made me switch to like, oh, it's not just my expertise and my specialty and maybe my superpower isn't just I can provide the technical components you need to do a podcast. It's no, I can provide a space and an experience and a design that goes beyond what maybe just a technical producer can provide.
Yeah, this is so far outside of the scarcity mindset that it's hard to grasp when you're in it. Mm-hmm. I heard so she's almost paying for a peace of mind that you're providing, right?
Yeah.
And you can't assign an hourly rate to that peace of mind.
No.
And that's what starts to happen at really high prices. You're not just paying for the nuts and bolts of the work itself. You're paying for the trust and the mental peace of mind that I do not have to think about this again. Yeah. I'm paying this person a lot of money and I believe that they're going to deliver.
Yeah.
And then you get held accountable to that standard as well.
A more practical look at it is, how much am I willing to pay per hour to not have to think about this thing ever?
Yeah.
What's that value to somebody? Like I started to think about like, oh, somebody might look at me and be like, you're charging $5,000 a day to go spend just a day with that person. But I'm like, yeah, how many hours are in that day where now after that person never has to worry about how their podcast is going to get produced ever again.
Yep.
Or their content.
How much is it worth to them?
Yeah. How much
it's
is
not
their
about
time worth?
it's not about my rate per hour.
No.
It's about how much is it worth to you.
them.
I saw a really good clip on this, and it was this guy was talking to like a business school student, and he's talking about hourly rates for logo design. And he's like, so if it takes me 1 hour to produce an exceptional logo, but it takes me 10 hours to produce a really good logo, should I get paid less for the exceptional logo that only took me 1 hour to make? And the business school student is like, yeah, it took you less time. And so he has this whole conversation that was way better than I'm going to be able to re-articulate.
I think I know. Isn't it Chris?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name.
I'm going to butcher his last name.
He's bald.
Yes.
And he
saw that same thing. Yeah.
He frames it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is the mental reframe that a lot of people need to go through. So there's another way to think about this, right? There's charging more, but then there's also about, let's call it personal growth, business growth, however you want to think about it. So I'm thinking about next year, right? And we're doing some certain tax accounting. We have to make some decisions, and the decisions we make depend on what we think the business is going to be in 3 to 5 years from now. And so I'm doing revenue projections, and I always do like good, better, best scenarios. And I laid out some scenarios, and I'm like thinking about it. And the next day I'm working out, and I'm like, how do I think about this way bigger? Like, let me just let go of how I'm thinking about everything right now. How do we do 10x next year? And so then I start bulleting down, and I'm like, in order to do 10x next year, what would need to be true? I'm not even thinking about what do I need to get done, just what would need to be true. So for example, maybe you need 10 times as many sales reps. In order to have 10 times as many sales reps, what needs to be true? I may need to have certain sales trainings in place. I may need to be able to afford a certain amount in payroll. Okay, in order to have a sales training in place, in order to be able to afford that amount in payroll, what would need to be true? And I keep backing that all the way down, and until I essentially get a to-do list. Like, these are now the set of activities that I need to prioritize in order to make cascade up and make this the new reality.
Right.
Versus continuing the set of actions that we're doing today, which will produce the size business that we're at now. I want to go from here, which is what we're at now, to up here. That's a different set of behaviors. That's a different set of challenges. So I need to let the team continue to do what we're doing here while I assemble this next phase of the company. And I think you can apply the same thing to personal challenges. It's like, you may be, not working out at all. You may be overweight. Let's say you're like fucking 100 pounds overweight or whatever it may be. And, the goal is like, how do I go from 35% body fat to 15% body fat? I want to be at 15% body fat. Well, you obviously can't be repeating the same behaviors that you are today. So you would then think, well, what would need to be true for me to be at 15% body fat? Well, I'd need to be eating this many calories. I'd need to be exercising this much. And if I do the math, I'd probably need to maintain that regimen for 14 months or whatever. Okay. That's now your plan.
Yeah.
You literally just created the plan for yourself. You can achieve basically anything with that. So the same thing applies for if you're charging 500 now, but you want to charge 5,000 in the future, you need to ask yourself, if I want to charge 5,000 in 6 months from now, what needs to be true? And take that question seriously and put down concrete answers. Yeah. If I want to sell 1,000 units of the new product that I'm launching, what needs to be true in order for that to happen? I need to have this many people on my email list, and I need this many people to convert from the email list. Well, if I need this many people on the email list, what needs to be true? Well, our ads need to be driving this amount of traffic to the landing page and they need to convert at this rate. Well, in order for that to happen, what needs to be true? Well, I need to have creatives that are right. And you're just
constantly reverse engineering. So why not reverse engineer from the highest, biggest possible potential?
And then you can do it. You can literally do it.
Yeah. You'll find, your brain will find the way.
Your brain will find the way.
Yeah. So whatever you think your biggest, swing for the fences is, multiply that by about 10 and then reverse engineer from that.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
And all of the anxiety comes from not sitting down to actually do that work.
Yeah.
When overthinking produces anxiety, right? Action, you see this quote all over the internet, right? Like the antidote to anxiety is action. That's just period, full stop. As soon as you start working on the thing, your brain is occupied with working on the thing
instead of worrying about the thing.
And not worrying about the thing. And so...
and truthfully, whether I'm thinking about trying to get, say, 5,000 units sold or 10,000 units sold, that kind of feels about the same to me regardless. Hell, even 25,000 units. So why not just keep going?
Yeah, why not keep going? I mean, there may be, when you say what needs to be true, there may be very realistic hurdles that come in the way, and you say, okay, well, that's a good answer. That makes that outcome not possible.
Right. So now we can go one step below that then.
Or, I need to get this out of the way in order to make that true. So this is actually the goal now.
Right.
And yeah, that's all I am thinking about.
I know. I love it. I love that you're so focused on that right now. Man, we didn't even get into the latest kid stuff, but I feel like those are.
Well, I was
you were babysitting,
watching
right?
3 kids for the last 2 weeks. So
full time, or were they in school or?
Well, they're all in school.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are their ages?
12, 11, and 9.
Oh, okay.
So, meaningfully different than, the experience 3 years ago. Brains are a little more formed, but not entirely. So I think about leadership versus management a lot. Like, I fucking gag at founders that are like, oh, I fucking hate being a manager. I'm like, you're a fucking dickhead, dude. Like, you're such an idiot. And because, and I've heard it so many times, like, being a manager is just being a babysitter. And I'm like, that's because you're a bad manager. You don't understand what it means to be a good manager.
And maybe you formed a bad team. You
may have formed a bad team, and also, oh my God, some of the things that I see are. So I'm thinking about I think about management versus leadership a lot, and I then thought about it in the context of children, and I thought, okay, so in order to get the kids to school every day. And it's like a fucking rolling schedule between 7 a.m. to like 8:30. They all 3 different schools, 3 different start times, 3 different lunch, 3 different snack, like all. And that's management. Knowing the times, knowing the locations, knowing who needs to get up at 6 a.m. versus 6:45, and getting all those things. That's management, right? That's being organized, detailed, making sure people know what they're supposed to do at what time. That's management. When the 9-year-old throws a temper tantrum because he doesn't want to clean his room, and he's been in his room for 30 minutes, and every time you check, he's actually playing in the corner of his room and not cleaning his room. And every time you say, hey, why aren't you cleaning your room? He fucking throws a major fit because he doesn't want to. That's not management. That becomes leadership. And so this was actually happening. And Heather was losing it. She was going harder at him. So he was resisting, then she was getting more upset, which was making him resist more.
Right.
And so I was doing the dishes, and I was just like, pause. I got this. Just hold on. I go in there and I'm like, I'm going to have a conversation with this kid. Yeah. And I know it's not going to create the solution immediately, but I need to get him to like reverse how he's feeling and just kind of smooth him out to get this objective done.
You need to level out that cortisol.
You got to level out that cortisol because he's sitting there being a fucking idiot, rolling around on his bed, and he's just fucking rooted into his position now. I don't want to clean this room.
He's in his lizard brain.
He's in his lizard brain. And I'm like, okay, so do you know why we're asking you to clean this room? I don't know. And I'm like, because your mom is coming home later today. She's been gone for 2 weeks. And don't you want your mom to be happy when she comes home? And he's like, I don't know. You know, he's still fucking lizard braining. And I'm like, well, I think that you'd want your mom to be happy, right? That's why I'm outside cleaning the kitchen, because I want your mom to come home and not be stressed out. And he's like, all right. I'm like, look, there's really not that much left here. You've actually done a pretty good job so far. So I'm just going to set a 10-minute timer, and I'm going to come back in 10 minutes. And I really believe that you can get this done in 10 minutes. Okay. I set the 10-minute timer. I come back. It's like, 50, 25% better. It's not all the way. I don't have that expectation. I'm just trying to move the kid along.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so how's it feeling in here? And he's still like, I don't know, like still kind of resisting, but he's not resisting as much. And I'm like, look, you really don't want to clean your room right now, right? He's like, no, I don't want to clean my room right now. I'm like, okay, well, and so I leveled with him. He's on fucking ADD medication. He's 9 years old. They put him on ADD medication. And I'm like, so you know that medication that you have to take for school every day? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, you remember I told you that I used to have to take that when I was a kid too? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, and you remember how I told you I don't have to take it anymore? He's like, yeah. I'm like, do you want to know how I don't have to take it anymore? He's like, sure. And I'm like, because when there's a hard thing that you don't want to do, a little hard thing that you don't want to do, and you do it, your brain gets stronger. And he's like, I saw him kind of get it. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, so if I'm going to set another 10-minute timer. And if you can get this room, there's just a little bit there, and a little bit here. I believe you can get it done in 10 minutes. And that means your mom's going to be really happy when she gets home, and your brain's going to be stronger. So I'm going to leave. I leave and I come back, and like we got the room cleaned. And like I had one of the most rewarding experiences like 4 hours later. Room's clean, house is clean. We're like moved on with the day, in a good mood, playing basketball outside. It's like 9 p.m, and we're just like kind of laying by the pool. The dogs are playing around, and he's just chilling. He's like this 9-year-old kid, squeaky voice, and he goes, Uncle Faiez? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you were right. And I'm like, right about what? He's like, I do feel better now.
Nice.
And I was like, there you go.
I can't wait for you to be a dad, man. There it is. That's all you ever need from the kids.
Yeah, it felt really good. And I don't know if he's going to remember that,
Oh, he'll remember. They all remember.
And I'm just like, if every time I see this kid, I can help him remember that there's little opportunities in the day to make your brain stronger, to get over the challenges that you have, like you're going to be better off for it. I'm not going to worry about him in 10, 15 years. Yeah.
Adults need to know that too.
It's the same lesson.
Same.
So, it was like leadership versus management. I was like very conscious. I'm like, it's a crisis situation, right? He's all reptilian right now.
Yeah.
How he is going to be a reflection of how I show up for him in this moment, right? I need to give him some energy. I need to give him, model how to get through this with him.
Yeah. It's a very different approach. It's something I have to remind. It's the thing I probably have to remind myself the most. And Casey's really great at it. I'm pretty solid at it. But it's like resistance can't be met with resistance. it's not going to work ever with kids, let alone, I mean, it's not going to work with adults usually, but definitely not with kids.
Totally.
Yeah. There has to, now don't get me wrong. I've had like breaking points where I'm like, okay, I'm bringing down the hammer a little bit right now.
For sure.
But that's it.
Yeah. And
but
granted,
most of the time you can talk them through it. You just got to get on their level.
And it takes time.
It does. It just takes longer.
And you don't always have time, which is probably where
it gets tougher.
Where it gets tough. So in that moment, I knew I had time, so I played the time out.
Which is so interesting because in extreme ownership, they talk about sometimes it just takes a more thorough explanation from your leadership, so then the team knows what the fuck is going on.
Totally.
Because most of the time they just don't know. And then that's where the separation happens of like, well, there's like this disconnect of like wondering why your boss is doing something the way they're doing it because they literally just don't know. Or there's like a judgment towards it or an attachment to something else because there just hasn't been a solid explanation from leadership. That's all that kid needed from you was just like a pretty decent explanation to get him on the way.
Totally. It's just like, nailed it.
Yeah.
That's the job of, I swear, I believe that's the number one job of leadership is clear communication. Like, it's just so easy to assume. We just fired a client because of this. Like literally 2 days ago, sent him the notice, like we're done, 7-day notice. And it's because our staff it's for the staffing agency. So our staff, was giving us certain feedback. And then I was like, can you send me screenshots of this communication? I need to collect the facts before I'm like blindly on your side here. And this dude is just like sending all caps messages with exclamation points before he's even like gathered the evidence, just pointing fingers at his team like, why is this not done? All caps, exclamation points, or like, what the fuck is going on? All caps, exclamation points. And I'm like,
bro,
what is wrong with you? In what universe do you think this is okay or a good way to lead your team?
Yeah.
And that's actually, that would be a really good series. Is like, I've seen that happen in our company where a mistake was made and it's like, this can't fucking happen again. And it's just like, okay, is that going to make it not happen again?
Yeah, I know. We all know it doesn't need to happen. It's clearly a mistake. We all know it doesn't need to happen again.
Yeah. So why
the fuck do we need to all capitalize it and say
it's just dumb. Like, do you think that I'm going to take you more seriously now because of that?
No.
It just makes me not want to work with you. I don't want to work
with my VA right now. Whenever there's like something she hasn't done to maybe what my standard would be, let's say, I automatically just always assume, I didn't communicate it correctly. I start with that now.
Totally.
I'm like, I must have not explained this properly, because otherwise, if I had, she probably would have done it correctly.
100%. I do the same exact thing.
That's what I start with, because that's typically 99% of the problem.
Totally. I want to make sure I exhaust that it's not me who's not communicating correctly, setting expectations correctly. And I want to build a body of evidence against myself that, okay, I'm really confident now that it's not me.
I always want to start with, well, what if I'm wrong?
Totally.
What if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Approach the subject or approach the situation so much differently.
And that's leadership, which makes management way easier, because if they see you owning your side of the street, they automatically want to do a better job. Anybody wants to do a better job.
Yeah.
If you're working with somebody who sees a situation and is like, what could I have done better there? You automatically start asking yourself the same question.
Yeah.
But if you work with somebody and something goes wrong and they point the finger at you, you automatically point the finger at them.
Yeah. Resistance is met with resistance.
Resistance is met with resistance. It's so
fundamental to every age, every component of life, every leadership position, whether it's parenting. Resistance is met with resistance.
It all comes down to self-awareness.
Yeah. That ended up being a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. All right.
See you in the next one.
Peace.